Here's my audience. Now, have you ever wondered where this country began? Today I'm going to be talking about the American Revolution and the major events that occurred during it. So the American Revolution is one of the most important events in U.S. history. It created the foundation of our current nation. So according to an article called The American Revolution by Willard Wallace from Britannica, published February 6, 2026, due to the American Revolution, Britain's colonies won political independence and went on to form the USA. My name is Lucas Riggs, and I think it's important to share with you the information over the American Revolution, as well as the events and major battles that occurred during it. I'm going to be discussing information that I have from my own knowledge, as well as information from sources I found on the web. So I'm going to be discussing how the revolution began, some of the major events that occurred during it, as well as the aftermath of the revolution. So let's talk about how the revolution began. An article from the American Battlefield Trust titled No Taxation Without Representation by Mark Malloy that I found on February 26, 2026. After Britain won the 7 Years' War, the British national debt greatly increased. So this increase of debt led to Britain passing two acts. These acts were the Tea and Stamp Acts. These were these acts would put direct taxes on the colonists that would tax tea as well as paper goods. And this made the colonists very unhappy. So these two acts caused colonists to protest. An article from the National Archives titled Boston Tea Party with no author, published December 16th, 2024. In December of 1773, American colonists disguised as Mohawk Indians boarded ships and threw 340 chests of tea into the water. This event would be known as the Boston Tea Party, and here's an illustration of the colonists throwing the tea into the water. So to punish the colonists for this act of rebellion, Britain passed the Intolerable Acts, which was a series of acts. One of the main ones would close the Boston Harbor from importing and exporting goods from foreign nations, and it would it stopped self-governing in Massachusetts. So Britain would take over Massachusetts and govern it. So in response to this, the colonies would form the First Continental Congress, and the American Revolution would begin after a single shot was fired. This shot would be known as the shot heard around the world. So now that we know a little bit about how the revolution began, let's talk about some of the major events and battles that occurred during it. So the first battle of the American Revolution was the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Another article from the American Battlefield Trust titled Lexington and Concord, no author, that I found on February 27th, 2026. The colonists won this battle because of their intricate alarm system, which would alert the militia to take down the British as they arrived. Paul Revere was part of this alarm system. He would ride through the towns and alert the colonists that the British were coming. So in this first battle, the British thought it would be a very easy victory, but they were surprised because the colonists would end up winning this battle, and it proved that the colonists had a fighting chance. So on July 4th in 1776, the colonies would adopt the Declaration of Independence that was written by Thomas Jefferson. This stated that the colonies were separate from Britain, as well as it also said that all men were created equal. Britain did not accept this until September 3rd, 1783, when they signed the Treaty of Paris, which would end the American Revolution. So now let's talk about the aftermath of the American Revolution. So after declaring independence, the USA created its own government. The first American government was called the Articles of Confederation. This form of government was not very stable. It did not last very long. So an article simply titled Articles of Confederation with no author from the U.S. Department of State that I found on February 27th, 2026. It established a weak central government that mostly prevented individual states from conducting their own foreign diplomacy. As I said, it had many flaws, and the government cannot create, it couldn't tax, it could not create armies, nor could it create a unified currency. So in September of 1787, the Constitutional Convention was held in Philadelphia. So here's an illustration of what the Constitutional Convention looked like. I believe it had 12 delegates from 12 states, excluding Rhode Island. So during this convention, the U.S. Constitution was created. It replaced the Articles of Confederation, and it is still in place today. The Constitution would create a separation of powers. It would create 3 branches, and the separation of powers would make sure that no branch would have power over another, so it could not control the government solely. Under the Constitution, the government can now tax citizens as well as coin money and declare war. So today I've talked to you about how the American Revolution began, some of the major events and battles during it, as well as the aftermath and how it began the foundation of the United States. So the next time you wonder how the U.S. began, I want you to think about the events I've talked today about the American Revolution and how it created the start of the United States.